I spent a bit of time this past autumn building a porch on the front of our house. I was telling everyone it designed itself. The footprint was constrained by the line of the roof above it, and the wall by the garage. The height of the wall followed the line of the window beside it, and the door frame followed the line of the existing door. I didn't really know what I was doing making this though, so I focused on building it and didn't really record anything. I got all the glazing in just before winter got really wintry and spent Christmas thinking about a door. Lily eventually agreed it was something I could have a go at making myself. So after a few more mock-ups, we agreed to a design for the door, and I ordered some more of the hardwood I used to build the rest of the porch, which happened to be sapele. Thanks in part to a generous Christmas gift, I also ordered myself a table saw to help me with the job. I had to improvise an extension to the fence to keep things nice and square. And also made a quick cross-cutting sled out of some leftover ply, which turned out nicely. The saw has made a much bigger impact in the workshop than I expected. Cutting all the tongues and grooves and the tenons went really fast. And I got it all looking like a complete door shockingly quickly. Even cutting the mortises went better than I expected. With the help of a little jig I made from an offcut. It turns out that getting a table saw is the worst time to run out of bags for Helena Bonham carpet. I generated crazy amounts of sawdust in no time, and I had to start fighting it out of the last bag I had to be able to keep working before the new ones arrived. I ended up getting some reusable bags, which seemed like a reasonable idea for in the workshop, as the sawdust is pretty easy to disappear when you live in the woods. Now it was looking like a door, the next job was cutting the rebate for the glass to fit into. This was easy to do on the rails, but I wasn't brave enough to remove the riving knife and try and do it blind on the stiles. So I ended up cutting the rebate with a circular saw and tidying up the router and chisel, which went okay. I cut a bevel on the outside of the rebate, then was ready to move on to making the letter slot. I found this cool letter plate on Etsy, but when it arrived, one of the hinges was broken. My dad gave me his welder a while ago, which I've experimented with a couple of times, so I put it to work repairing the hinge. I was gifted some serious beginner's luck and got a nice solid repair done, so I marked up where the letter plate was going and set about cutting a slot into the rail for the flap to go into. I've had this jigsaw for a long time and I never really got on well with it, and the hardwood proved to be an arse too far for it. So I finished the rough cut with a handsaw and then tidied it up as best as I could with old Mr. Hitachi. The cut was much improved, but it still benefited from a bit of filler to tidy it up. Once that was done, I gave the edge a nice little chamfer too, and the letter plate fitted nicely. I was finally at the point where I couldn't avoid doing the glue up anymore. I watched so many YouTube woodworkers rush their way through the glue up out of worry of the glue setting up too fast. But I found the experience stressful because it was also final. The silly thing was that if it all glued up so much that I couldn't get it apart again, then I did it right. It went okay though, even without big enough clamps, and it ended up acceptably square once it was dry, which was a relief. I was always intending on painting this door, so a little filler helped tidy things up, and I was ready to bring it out to the porch to start fitting it to the door frame. I built the door frame in the porch to be as slim as possible to give me some wiggle room when I designed the door, so I still had to add a little extra timber to bulk the frame out a bit more. With it in place, I began the trial and error process of trimming the door down, and eventually got it fitting pretty reasonably. Next was trimming out all the fittings of the hardware, so I hunked the door back down to the workshop. I found this process surprisingly satisfying. Doing all this chisel work is so much more rewarding with hardwood. Unlike how today's cheap softwood can just crush under the chisel, no matter how sharp. But once I'd got the mortises for the hardware cut, I was ready to start priming it with preservative. I got carried away after the preservative and applied a first coat of paint too, but I realised I couldn't really do any more until I got the glazing installed. So now I had the double glazed unit, I put some load bearing tape on it and dropped it into the door, which allowed me to measure it up for the beading that was going to hold this piece of glass in. Having never been able to do it before, it's really satisfying being able to mill my own strip wood like this to fit exactly. Once I got the corners mitered and it fitted nicely, I pumped the cavity around the glass with glazer's silicone. And then I did the most insane part of this job, which is using a hammer right next to my new pane of glass. They were the last nails to put in, and I remember just in the nick of time to use shorter nails above the letter slot so they didn't poke through. And with that, the door was glazed. But I realised I still wasn't done at that point because I had forgotten to make a rain drip for the door. Back out of the workshop, Mr. Hitachi and I struggled again when trying to cut out the drip groove. But gladly I could just flip the piece of timber over and start again because I hadn't milled the angle onto the drip yet. And it ended up turning out alright. There was a sliver of daylight visible though when I put it on the door, so it felt like a bit of a cop-out, but I couldn't see a better way of attaching it. Then screwing it to the door and filling the screw heads from the inside. Once that was attached, it was back to lots more painting. It took a couple of days longer than I hoped, but I ended up being rewarded with a surprisingly bright February afternoon when I was ready to hang the door for the final time. It still fit, which was a huge relief. So I put the last few screws into the hinges and got to work fitting the hardware. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. It's been nice having the porch this winter even without the door in it. But having the door makes more of a difference than I expected. It actually feels like a little room now. The porch now properly functions in the way I had intended, which was to create a transitional space between the outside world and our living room that the existing front door opens straight into. I hope the door lasts. It's not like I really knew what I was meant to be doing making this. I was just figuring it out based on looking at how other doors were made. But it looks nice and works well at the moment, so I hope it continues for years to come. I like to watch a bit of carpentry here on YouTube, and compared to what I see, I don't think I could go as far as calling this fine woodworking. So maybe this is best called acceptable woodworking. Thanks for taking the time to watch my video.